Oh, sure. Shower, motherfuckers. Welcome back to the pod. Today we have another special guest, and every guest I bring on, there's just some kind of connection where I feel that this person can transmit some kind of energy through the screen where people can feel. So yeah, welcome, brother, to the podcast.
Not so much, man. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, you're welcome. And can you please introduce yourself, mate, and what you do and how we've crossed paths?
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Eddie Duffield. I come from Melbourne, Australia. Back in your hometown, from the main streets of Melbourne. I'm a comedian, and I've just come over to Thailand to do a bit of a journey over here, and that's where we met about a month ago in Ceremony. And just looking forward to this chat, and it's just great to be back in the land of smiles, mate. Just blokes that look like me, we don't always come to Thailand to find ourselves. In one way or another, you got to find yourself, the white-balled Australian man that comes over to Australia. But I'm here for different reasons than most.
Yeah, of course.
I've been coming here for a long time, and it's really good to be back.
Right. Yeah, and like, humor for me has honestly been like one of the medicines that has kind of kept me alive, man, to be honest. Like, having a sense of humor about life's shittiest moments always takes the edge off. So before we get onto your medicine journey in particular, can you share with us what got you into comedy and what humor or comedy does for you as well?
I think that, for me, comedy was always it was very similar to you. It was always a medicine, My mum passed away when I was really young. Nothing funny in the dark. And so it was just me and my old man, me and my dad for a while there. And it was kind of a bit of a start to life. And I always just felt like being funny, especially I started school a little bit younger than everybody else. So everyone was a bit bigger than me. So to be funny was the way of connecting with people. And it really is my greatest joy is to make people laugh. The way I got into comedy as a comedian, 2019, I went to Burning Man, and my friends were running a camp in Burning Man called Mr. Pickle's Nipple Dips, where you basically dip your nipples in a huge bucket of ice water, and then you would do a pickleback of Jameson with pickle juice, and they chose me to wrangle people in to dip their nipples in ice water, which is what I believe God put me on this earth to do. And so, somebody gave me some LSD and a megaphone, and I was out there for a good 8 hours, just trambling on this microphone in the dust. I was wearing skin tights and a mullet wig with a Foster's Australian headband on it. I officiated my own wedding there to a woman whose name I don't remember. And by the end of that, everyone was just you've got to be a comedian, you've got to be a comedian. So when I got home, I was seeing a girl at the time, and she bought me a course, a stand-up comedy course, which is a weird kind of oxymoron. You can't really learn about it. It was a nightmare, to be honest. One of the things about comedy, everyone thinks it's really cool and really fun. 85% of it is hanging out with the biggest fuckwits you've ever seen in your life. And there was a lot of that going on. But I wrote my first 7 minutes, it forced me to write my first 7. And that 7, I used that to enter a competition called Raw Comedy, which was probably my 3rd time on stage doing stand-up. And then from there, I made it into the big state finals. I think about 2,000 people enter that every year, and I got into the sort of top 12, and then crushed the big state finals. And I feel like I was sort of robbed a little bit, but it is what it is. It was very drug-heavy humor, and it was supposed to go on television. And you know what Australian television's like, mate. They're not going to have me on Neighbours anytime soon, just in a K-hole. out the front of Ramsey Street. So yeah, I did make it on there, but from there, that was sort of the beginning of the journey, and just felt like something I really love to do. And it's funny, like at the start of 2019, before Burning Man and everything, I like to write some sort of goals every year, and one of my goals was to find like a new community of people, and I didn't know how that was going to manifest itself. And through comedy, it's weird. Like I'm 40 years old now. It's kind of can be difficult to make new sets of friends and stuff like that. I feel like especially people that get stuck into like office jobs and stuff, your friendship group becomes the people that you work with that you don't really have a lot in common with otherwise. But through comedy, like I feel like I've got this really great new network of people, and that's been a real blessing to me. And it's a slog, man. Comedy's hard, you know. As an art form, I love making people laugh off the cuff. But when you sort of standing there, I mean, especially in Melbourne, you'll go to some of these gigs and like, oh yeah, mate, do you want to come and do my comedy show? Yeah, absolutely. I'll be there 8 o'clock. You get there at 8 o'clock, there's 6 people having a palmer. There's a couple, they're breaking up. They're right at the front of the stage. Some autistic guy starts doing a mic check. Is this thing on? And then you're up, you know, telling stories about your dick or whatever. And these people are just trying to eat dinner, you know? So it can be a real slog, man. But I love it. I love the hardness of it. And yeah, I just want to continue on. Yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah, yes, brother. Yeah. So we both grew up in the same we both grew up in Melbourne, Australia. And for me, Melbourne, like the social dynamics growing up in Melbourne as a kid, you have to be extremely witty to not get eaten alive. Yes, it's a real dog-eat-dog world in the school system. For me anyways, I was bullied a lot. Yeah, lots of racism.
Yeah.
It's either you gotta be witty enough to come back with comebacks, or you gotta be like a tough guy and like preserve your status.
Yeah.
And how has that experience kind of shaped your humor?
Well, I was never really good at fighting. I'm a lover, not a fighter, and I'm shit at both. So to be able to make people laugh always got you out of it. Especially in Australia, there's that larrikin culture, and I can't, you know, I mean, it's a racist country, mate. So being Asian and coming where you came from, I'm sure you would have copped it. Yeah, oh yeah, lots of that. Yeah, mate. I'll be there, mate. And so yeah, I think that like as a coping mechanism and a way to make friends and stuff like that. I remember just like watching The Simpsons, watching Eddie Murphy Delirious, all of that kind of stuff, and I would just memorize it and do it at school, like on the Oval and stuff. And it was just the best way to connect with people because I was really small. You know, I started school when I was 4.5, I guess, when most people start when they're like 5, you know what I mean? So that 6 months in those time frames, as you get older, 6 months, you know, that gap closes really quickly. But when you're 6 months younger than all your mates and they're 15 and you're 14, their bodies are changing so much quicker and all of that stuff, and you always feel a little bit behind. So comedy was just my way to connect. So, you know, probably ADHD as well. There's probably plenty of that going on. Like heaps of that. Oh, mate, I was sat in the hallway for most of high school. You know, I wasn't allowed in the class because I was too funny, right? Nah. You know, but yeah, no, so I think that was a big thing. But you went to Swinney, yeah?
Yeah, but Swinburne, shout out to Swinburne Secondary High School.
Shout out to the Rocket Park.
Yeah. That was really the best high school. I actually, you know, like what most people don't know is like my family grew up pretty wealthy, and my dad went bankrupt when I was like 10. So I went to Scotch College. Yeah, and that place was a fucking nightmare.
Yeah, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a tough place to grow up because it was like predominantly like white rich boys.
Yeah,
right, and there was
untouchable as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No girls inside. Like you had to either developed a very quick mind or like just be tough, you know. So yeah, that was kind of my coping mechanism to be like one that Asian tough guy.
Yeah, totally.
But definitely humor, man. Like having those, you know, like out of control laughs to me are so healing. You know, can you share the journey, because you've lived quite a big chunk of your life in South America. Yeah, what was the journey transitioning out of Oz to a completely different continent, finding the medicine, and then like kind of developing a new life or identity?
Well, I think that like for me, and I still struggle with it, I just never really felt home in Melbourne. Like I love my family. I've been very blessed growing up and all of that kind of stuff. I've had a lot of love in my life, but there was just something where I just never really felt that home back home,
Right.
you know? And so as soon as I turned 18, I came to Thailand. You know, I was like 18 in a day, and that was my first big trip, you know, and first time I took mushrooms. I'd taken every other drug, you know, but I'd never taken psychedelics. First time I took mushrooms was in Koh Phangan. And I was actually thinking about this just a day or two ago. Me and my mate were traveling together, and he'd fallen asleep on the beach. And I went to a bar nearby in Koh Phangan in a place called Thong Nai Pan. And I went to a bar, it would have been about 10:30 at night. And I ordered just a mushroom shake, just like give it here, you know? And so I drank a bucket. This lady at the thing, she made me a bucket of mushrooms, and I just smashed the whole thing. And then went and found my mate asleep on the beach, and I was just giggling my ass off, and I was like, mate, I've just done mushrooms. And he was like, oh, sweet, I'll go and get some mushrooms. And I'm like, sucked in, bars closed, you got to sit with me while I trip my balls off, and you got to sit there and just deal with it, you know? So that was my first psychedelics experience, and we stayed in that town for like 6 weeks, and everyone just called me Mushroom Boy. That was everyone's nickname. Oh, Mushroom Boy, they used to call me every time I walked into the bar. So I guess that was my beginning with psychedelics. It was a good trip. It was great. It was amazing. I remember looking at the moon, and it like was changing faces all the time. Like it would be like these different iterations of like cartoon faces of the moon that I'd seen. And I had just got to Thailand, and I was like, oh, I guess that's just what the moon does over here. I just thought the moon was different. You know what I mean? It was an amazing trip. I was really blessed to have such a good time.
And your mate like looked after you the whole time?
Not really, nah. Nah, he just kind of laughed at me and stuff. And he was 18. We were 18. I didn't know anything about like Trip City. Back then, I used to take psychedelics because I loved drugs. You know, that was before I discovered that they were a medicine. So I guess South America, I left Melbourne in 2011, and I came back 2018. And that trip was, I was going to see that same friend in Ecuador, and the plan was to go Ecuador, Colombia, make my way up through Central America, and then go to Canada for the ski season, which looking back is wild. I fucking hate the snow. Got nothing to do with skiing. I'd never been skiing in my life. I don't know why it was in my head to do a ski season in Canada, but just the way things lined up, I ended up staying in South America for a long period of time. And the first time I heard about Aya or any kind of ceremonies like that was on Rogan, and
Same, bro.
yeah, it was Graham Hancock talking about it. Yeah. And that was what opened me up to it. And I went looking for more drugs. You know, like I didn't realize, I thought I was going to be looking at the moon and having a great time. I didn't think I was going to be unpacking all of this trauma, you know. But the first time, so I guess I ended up in Peru. I'd heard of it. A really, really beautiful friend of mine named Cole told me about it. And he was like, he was a few years older than me. He was working for the same company that I was working for at the time. We got on really well. He was one of few men in my life, especially at that time, that I could really talk to about like proper emotional stuff without like, you know, you go further to the surface level. And he'd gone and done like his yoga teacher training when he was 18. So this would have been like in the early 2000s when like dudes weren't in Bali selling courses on fucking yoga teacher training. Like he'd done it because it was like a calling. So when I went and did it, I had some idea that it was going to be a little bit different, but I didn't realize that it was going to break me open the way it did. So the first time we went to Iquitos, which is this, as you know, this crazy, crazy town in Peru, in the north. It's the biggest city in the world that's not reachable by road. Did you know that?
No.
So you can only get there by plane or by the river. So everything that is in Iquitos has either come up the river or been flown in there, which is kind of crazy because it's a big city. Like there's a lot of construction, a lot of concrete. If you think about all that stuff that's come off the boat.
Yeah, shout out to Iquitos. I mean, like back then, it was a fucking like a jungle town. Now it's really like kind of well done up, you know. Now I can see like how it's like a tourist hotspot because it's quite nice. That's wild. There are lots of police patrollers, so it's a lot safer.
That wasn't my experience.
Yeah, I got robbed in Iquitos 3 times, man. Yeah, 3 times, and all like with like machetes or knives and stuff. Yeah. And actually, one of the robberies the very next day, because Iquitos was quite small back then. I saw the people who robbed me like just playing soccer, like this.
It's good. That's good for the soul. Yeah.
Yeah. So you sat with the Shipibo.
Yeah. So
That's one.
yeah, so to get into it, like, so you get to Iquitos. I was traveling with a mate of mine, this other friend of mine, Rory, and shout out Rory, one of my closest mates and somebody that I really love. But he was going through some really tough shit at the time, and we were both big potheads. You know, I abused pot from the age of about 14 until not that long ago. You know, I've had times off it, but yeah, for the most part, even like during COVID, I got right back into it again. And my mate Rory and me were big potheads, and I knew that I had to prepare for Aya dieta wise. He wasn't really that into going into it with me, you know, where if I was the type of person at the time, if there was weed around, I was smoking. And we would go to restaurants and we're trying to do dieta, and he would order spaghetti carbonara and stuff like that. And you put a spaghetti carbonara in front of me, I'm gonna have a crack at it. So we weren't really that focused on dieta. And in Iquitos back then, it was kind of like a little bit like walking down Khao San Road in Thailand or something. Like everybody was like, ayahuasca, ayahuasca, ayahuasca. You want a bucket? It was like that. And so it was really hard to find the right people. But I met this guy, Freddie, this English dude, right? I'll never forget it. He just ripped past me on a scooter, me and Rory, and then he did a U-turn and he came back and he pulled up in front of us and he was like, "You folks looking to fucking do some ceremonies or what?" Like, and I was like, this isn't what I expected, how I expected it to go down. I was thinking like a little woman with like shrunken heads around her nails, yeah, colors, you know, like painted face and all of that. And all of a sudden it was like this chavvy ass pasty English dude. And he had a hostel there. And so I went to his hostel and he introduced me to a friend, Ian, because we were meant to be leaving the next day, leaving Iquitos. And and we hadn't been able to sort this ayahuasca thing out. And so Ian, he goes, "Well, why don't you just smoke DMT? You know, why don't you just have that instead? Is this all kosher?" I don't know. Say, "Oh, yes, I'm there." Yeah, but he's like, "Why don't you just smoke DMT instead? You don't have to prepare. You don't have to do anything." And I was like, "Sweet, I've smoked DMT in my mate's garage. I don't know what that's all about. That's no worries." So me and Rory, the next morning, Ian came over to this hostel and I was like, yeah, well, he was like this 7-foot English bloke, bald as a witch's tit, DMT tattooed on his neck, you know, the molecule like tattooed on his neck and everything. And I was like, "What's it like? You know, like what can we expect?" And he was like, "I'll rip your ego out your chest." He was like, "I'll fucking put my hand down your throat and rip your ego out." And I like didn't even know what an ego was back then. And I was like, fucking hell, that sounds hectic, eh? And he told me that he'd done it 2,500 times intravenously. Hey, the guy was like 37. It's like, you must have been doing it every day. And he was tapped in. So I went with him, me, Rory, and these other two guys. And we had this DMT ceremony, and I'll never forget it. It was like in our house in the outskirts of Iquitos. He was staying with this German guy that was just covered in tattoos. And when we arrived, he was out of the shower and just buff naked, just kind of standing in the kitchen, making a tea or whatever, buff naked. And that's how the ceremony began. You know what I mean? Meeting this cat. And there was an Australian guy there who was doing service at the Temple of the Way of Light, which is kind of like ayahuasca McDonald's, you know, over in Iquitos. It's like, it's the big center. And he was on a silence retreat, right? He'd taken a vow of silence, but he was wearing a whiteboard around his neck. He had a whiteboard around his neck with a marker attached to it, which I'm pretty sure isn't how vows of silence work. I'm pretty sure monks aren't rolling around with a chalkboard, you know, like writing anything down. Yeah, exactly. And he was wearing every bracelet as if everyone he'd ever met selling a bracelet on the side of the road on his travels, he bought half a dozen off. he had bracelets like the whole way up his arms and like up his. He looked like one of those long neck Karens, but like just his wrists and ankles, you know. And he was on this vow of silence, and he was writing down like, I saw that plant in a dream, and then just showing it to me on the whiteboard, and I was like, oh, sweet. What did the plant tell you? He's like, can't remember. I was like, all right, good chat, you know. And so he went in first, and he was on his vow of silence, mate. He was cooking up a storm in there, man. He was like chatting. It sounded like he was on this big orgasm. And then anyway, I was supposed to go before my mate, and he asked if he could go before me. And I'm really glad he did. He went before me and had a really, really tough time on the DMT. And then I went in afterwards and I had a beautiful time. This guy Ian, like, he was biting the filters off Marlboro Reds and like using those to cleanse, you know, like instead of a Malacho. He's biting the filters off Marlboro Reds. He was drinking Inca Cola, this yellow cola that they drink over liters of it, man. Wasn't the most like sacred ceremonial space. And I remember going into that ceremony, and I remember that was unlike any experience I'd ever had. And he was in there with me. He was chanting these beautiful Icaros, and he was in the space with me, sort of showing me.
Wait, just to clarify, this was smoking
DMT, yeah, but
not buffalo DMT.
DMT that he was making. As far as I know, from my experience with Bufo and my experience with this was definitely just 5-MeO. As far as that's right, isn't it? Yeah.
So buffalo is 5-MeO. DMT is NN-DMT.
Yeah. So this would have been NN. Yeah, because it was that one where it was just like Bufo is so much more connection to it. It's almost like comparing mushrooms and LSD in my experience, you know what I mean? When you have the NM, you kind of like, that's where it's all the elves and the psychedelic and the people talking to you. The Bufo feels like you're connected, to me anyway, with one particular life force, right? You know, one particular medicine teacher. And he was in there, he was showing me all this stuff. I remember right as I went in, this German dude had gone in for another shower. He was just showering back to back. He was on some kind of shower dieta, this fella. And he turned the shower on right as we were smoking out of this curly pipe. So right as I was exhaling, the shower turned on, and I thought I was pissing my pants. That was my last thought I had as I went in to the realm, was like, oh, I've pissed myself. And then all of these elves were like, what's piss, mate? I go, what have you ever, you know? Doesn't matter in here. Nobody's judging you for pissing your pants here, mate. No one's got pants, you know? And it was wild, man. It was wild. I remember it was just like the best orgasm I ever had, you know, and like no sense of time or anything. With Bufo, like I'm able to move around a little bit. This was like I was out. I had no idea who I was. And it was a real ego death. The real first time I'd really experienced like, holy shit. Like,
so he held the space.
He held the space, and he held the space really well. Fair play to him. Like, he held it really well. He was in there. He was just battling his own stuff, you know what I mean? He had his own stuff going on, and he was a bit of a fiend. Me and you have spoken about this before, where a lot of people are doing the medicine, but they're not exactly doing the work, you know what I mean? So when you're in Peru and you start moving in those ayahuasca circles and stuff like that, you meet a lot of people that are like, I've done 150 ceremonies, and you're kind of like, well, when are you going to start doing the work, you know? That's like you're trying to build a car and you've bought 100 tires and that's all you got. Like, where's the engine, brother? Like, where are you going to put a chassis on this thing? You're not ready, you know?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's a good segue also to talk about how integration is something so overlooked, Geoffrey. Because they want ayahuasca to just be like, yeah, as you said, this drive-through service where you come out a different person. But that's not what ayahuasca does. Ayahuasca opens up possibilities, and it's up to you to keep walking that path towards them, you know.
I can't stress enough how important the integration is, you know. You go in and you get all of these lessons and stuff, but it's about like how you apply it. It's not a fix. I know people that go in there and they're like curing addiction or something like that. It'll show you like where that addiction came from, why that can be so toxic for you, why that's such a bad thing to carry into your life, and especially like the traumas that sort of began that. But if you just repeat those patterns, that addiction's just coming back.
And maybe even stronger as well.
Many times it did for me,
Right.
for sure. So basically, just to wrap up that thing within, and when I came out of that, I remember I saw my mate and I said, we were meant to be getting on a plane the next day from Iquitos. And I said, you've got to go. And he was like, oh, go. Like, we're in the middle of nowhere. Like, where am I going? And I was like, no, I mean, like, tomorrow you get on plane and I stay.
Yeah.
Our journey for that time and places was done.
Yeah.
You know, because I knew I needed to do dieta. I knew I needed to go much, much deeper into this thing. I ended up in that space. I ended up meeting a guy named Tim at that same hostel, and he got me on the journey where I went from never having drunk ayahuasca to booking a tambor, which is like a little hut in the middle of nowhere. And I spent 14 weeks on a plant dieta in the middle of the jungle in a town called Tiamshiaku, which was about 3 hours upriver, about 4 hours upriver, 3 hours downriver. You know how the Amazon works like that, you know, it takes ages to get, it's like going against the traffic. Yeah. And and I went from nothing to 14 weeks out there, and that was the start of my plant medicine journey. And I went straight into the tricks and ango dieta as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I really want to get into, because I think most people have this idea that, like, when you go to Peru or Iquitos, for example, it's ayahuasca. That's the thing. But in the jungle, like, the spirit world is the fake. Ayahuasca is just one of the gateways, and there's so many different other plant teachers that work with ayahuasca that take you on crazy experiences. So can you please share what the first Aya ceremony was like, who the shamans were, and what was working with Chiri Sananga like?
So because I met this guy, Tim, he was this Aussie guy, he was the one who put me on to like doing it properly. It was kind of like the reverse of like everything I'd experienced before. He was the one that was like, you've got to go right into this. And so I went. It was with this woman named Isabella. She was a curandera from Peru. I wouldn't say shamana because I don't know if she'd done that work, and we'll get back to that in a sec. But my first ceremony there was a lot of purging and there wasn't much else, you know, and I felt like I was kind of separated from it. Second one, again, a lot of purging and not much else. And I remember going outside of the ceremony space and sitting and holding on to this ayahuasca vine that was out in front, had all this moss and stuff on it, and holding onto it under a full moon and kind of being like, is this not for me? Like, will I never break through this space, you know? And also being like, motherfucker, I just paid for 14 weeks at a half in the middle of the jungle. I better start getting something, you know? Because otherwise it's just me and the anacondas out there. And on the third one, that's when she really broke it open and showed me everything. But Isabella was the one who put me on a Trixanango dieta at the time. She spotted some thyroid issues, some heart issues, as in not heart issues as in what we would in the West consider heart issues, that were more spiritual than physical.
Like blocking me from love.
Exactly. Blocking me from love, blocking me from, I remember I just had so much anger back then. Anger that really doesn't exist in me the same way anymore. I mean, I still get angry, but not like that, you know? And the Trixanango really cured a lot of that. And I think one of the things we should speak on for people that are like interested in this whole process is this process of becoming a shaman, right? An actual shaman, where the term derives from, when you really do it, not a curandera, you're not a venison worker or anything like that, but you're an actual shaman. The way they do it is they get chosen at a very young age. They go out into the middle of the jungle and they will do a dieta on different plants in the jungle, right? And basically, at least from my experience, all I ate was a handful of lentils, a handful of green plantains, a tomato, a grated carrot, and later I added half an avocado because I couldn't stop thinking about bacon double cheeseburgers. So I knew I needed some fat, right? But for them, it's like yucca. They only eat one plain thing. And then they choose one plant, and 6 months, a year, they're drinking a little tincture of that plant. It's not ayahuasca every day.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of that until they understand that the spirit of that plant becomes binded with them. So when you come to me, or I come to a shaman and I'm ill in some way, they have this Rolodex, they have this index of all of these plants that they can tap into, because they understand the medicines of all of these different plants. You know, one really amazing thing that happened to me after my first 2 ceremonies, I remember going on a hike with the guy who was the brother of a shaman, and he took me on like a hike through the Amazon to just show me all of this different stuff. And he was telling me that every plant has a spirit, right? And every plant has, and all these plants have medicine in them. And the mother has already told us through the plants, she already gives us clues in what that heals. And he was like, so if you cut a carrot, it looks like an eye, and carrots are good for your eyes. And a walnut is really good for your brain. And garlic, you know, if you've got a head of garlic, in the middle there's that tube and it looks just like an esophagus. And carrots are good for your eyes, and walnuts are good for your brain, and garlic's good for your throat and your lungs and all of that stuff. And he was telling me that, and I was like, that's pretty cool. That's a good little thing, right? And then he showed me this plant. It was a black sort of thing, like a little fern, you know, and it was thick like this, and it sort of thinned out, and it was black, and it had white rings around it. And the rings started off solid, and they kind of faded into nothing. And he showed me this plant, and then he showed me this book. And in the book was the most dangerous, poisonous snake in the Amazon. And it didn't look a little bit like this plant. It looked identical. The markings on this plant were identical to that snake. And the only known antivenom in the jungle to that snake is that plant that looks exactly like it. Why?
What's the coincidence?
Well, there is no coincidence there. You know, like the mother has already shown us, well, everything that we need to know.
Yeah.
So that whole idea of being a shaman and going on and doing all of these different things, I mean, perhaps you can speak to that more, but that shamanic process, I think, is like, that as this ayahuasca line starts to spread out, there's a lot of great people working with it, but actual real shamans is like, doesn't seem to be as many, at least in my experience.
No, I mean, I agree. I mean, like, you know, one shaman early on told me that, like, you know, if you really want to know if you're a shaman or not, first, forget about being a shaman completely. Like, just walk away from the path completely, because if you're a shaman, that's all you're meant to be. And another one said to me, like, the spirits will try and kill you. That's the test. They will try and take your life physical. And if they haven't done that, then most likely in our shop.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, ayahuasca's just gotten so mainstream.
For sure.
It's gotten so mainstream. I think, like, being on the Joe Rogan podcast and having Graham Hancock there and some other guests who's done it, that really kind of brought it out into everyone's sphere. But now you just got to be so careful with who you sit with, because back then, if you're lucky, you'll get an amazing shaman or amazing space holder and you really feel the magic. But nowadays, like, you can meet a lot of imposters. You know, you can meet a lot of, like, just dodgy cunts.
They were going around when I was there, for sure. Especially, like, I remember, because I traveled so much, traveling as a man is so much different than it would ever be for a woman. I could never even get into that headspace of what that feels like. So for me to kind of like just disappear to some dude's house in the middle of fucking nowhere and smoke DMT is like, that's an easy decision for me. There's really the chances of something happening to me, even having that in my head, it doesn't feel like a possibility, because I've had this, whatever you would call it, this blessing, this much easier life, of being a man, right? But I would definitely witness shamans with women put some serious spells on these girls, and really, you know, draw them in and lock them in. And you hear a lot of those horror stories coming out of the jungle with good reason. And I think with Aya, it's like, man, do your research as much as you possibly can. You know, whatever when I first started drinking, I was like, everyone's got to do this. Mum's got to do it. Dad's got to do it. My stepmom's got to do it. I got to get my granddad onto it. He's fucking 89 years old. He can barely stand up. I don't even know how you get him in the bed. Everyone's got to do Aya. And then now I realize it has to call to you. You can't just go and do it. I got lucky. I was looking for a drug experience, but I do feel like I was getting called to it. That everything that happened, looking back, it's one of those things where when you zoom out on everything, the path is really clear. When you're in it at the time, you're just kind of drawn by some other force, and all of a sudden it's happening and you're there. And I think as it starts to spread, the misinformation grows. Now it's like on podcasts, the celebrities doing it, the Kardashians are doing it. That's when it's bugged.
Yeah, exactly.
When you get like ayahuasca by Kylie Jenner, that's when you're in trouble. You know what I mean? It's just on the shelves at the fucking Walmart or whatever. But yeah, I think that as it starts to spread, then the misinformation starts to spread. And it's something that deserves a lot of reverence and a lot of respect. And choosing the right people to do it with is essential, right? I had a mate that went and did one in Canada recently, the same guy that I was talking about earlier. And it was my really good friend, and he ended up on his own ayahuasca journey and stuff. But he was like, yeah, I did one in Canada. I was like, oh, how was it? He was like, yeah, it was 2 chicks and a UE boom. I'm like, mate, that sounds like a nightmare, dude, just listening to the Venga bus. But yeah, like I think that in choosing it, you really got to be careful, and the whole idea, I mean, you don't have to do it with a shaman like we were speaking of. There's some of the best ceremonies that I had were just with medicine people.
Yeah.
Especially when people can speak English, I was lucky that I spoke Spanish. So there was a barrier, but I didn't really speak Spanish of the soul. I didn't speak spiritual Spanish. So when I was doing it with medicine workers from the States, from Australia, there's been some really good ones and there's been some really shocking ones. I've done probably close to 35, 40 ceremonies now with dozens of different people, and some of them are really good and some of them aren't. And I feel like I'm lucky to sort of have a little bit of a composed headspace in that space,
Right.
I feel quite calm. But every time I think that I understand this medicine, that I understand how it works, she shows me that I don't know shit, and that's good. That's cool.
Yeah, it's humbling,
It is.
This is very humbling.
It's humbling, and like everything good comes on the other side of doing something difficult. Even like when I'm doing stand-up, I still get terrified before I go on stage because bombing is like the worst feeling in the world when you're doing really badly. And and it's like, but it's when you do well, it's like an addiction, right? And it's the same with the medicine. You kind of like I hope I'm always nervous before I do it. I really do. I hope I never get to a point where I go, this is going to be easy and great. And this is because that's when she's going to kick your ass,
Yeah, that's a great point to make. Do you feel that the medicine helps your comedy?
It's funny, man. Like my intention to come over here was like, I really wanted to write this show called Dude, Where's My Shaman? Right? It's about all of my medicine journeys. And I was like, yeah, man, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to do all of these different ceremonies and I'm going to come up with like an amazing show, amazing stand-up show. And it's like I was speaking to another comedian friend of mine back home and he was like, have you written anything? And I'm like, it has been that funny. Like, it's been funny in that, like, I've had a lot of good laughs and met a lot of good people. But when you're in when you're in the space and you're like, oh yeah, I've gone through the trauma of losing your mom or whatever, it's not like it's got to be a hard thing to translate onto stage. I think as well in Oz, people get really freaked out by it. You know what I mean? Psychedelics for the greater Australian culture, that kind of dinky die, having a couple of pints, I remember I was microdosing mushies once and I told people that I was on mushrooms on stage. I never lost the crowd so quickly. They were like, is this guy gonna start crawling up my leg with a knife in his teeth? You know what I mean? Like they couldn't work out what I was about. It was like, that seems to be in the States, in Canada, like Canadians fucking mushrooms. Yeah. It seems to be a lot different thing. Are these lights all good? Yeah, sweet. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting thing to talk about. I mean, even Bufo, which I feel like is a medicine that I'm really getting called to work with. You know, I did a ceremony recently and it was amazing and I couldn't stop laughing and it was so beautiful and so art opening. But I don't know how do you even describe that? How do you begin to talk about that on stage? You know what I mean? I'll find a way.
Yeah.
But talking about plant medicine, I get a little bit nervous about not giving it the respect that it deserves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
And also about, I don't want to be the guy that frightens somebody off or pushes the wrong person towards it.
Right.
You know, it's going to be an interesting next decade with everything sort of unraveling the way it is. More and more people are going to need this medicine. The information is out there for people to go and do their own research, but it's going to call people to it that aren't right for it. I mean, me and you have been discussing a couple of people that probably aren't right for it recently that we know that have done it. You know what I mean? And I wonder what that's going to look like. Yeah, I've also been thinking a lot about like things like ibogaine, which I've never done. Have you done it?
Yeah.
How was that?
Fuck me. Yeah, so Iboga makes to me, and I say this with reverence to mother because she is, just to take a short moment to express my love for the medicine. She's my whole life. And I said this in my very first ceremony. You're my wife, you're my mother, you're my daughter, you are my life. I am married to. But Iboga, because there's ibogaine and iboga. Iboga is the root bark, and ibogaine is the synthesized alkaloid. And the thing with ibogaine, it synthesizes one of 4 alkaloids. But in iboga, the root bark, you had all 4 alkaloids that bring on the experience. So I feel that's where ibogaine is missing, you know. But yeah, Iboga makes ayahuasca to me look like a walk in the park.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Hours and hours and hours. Yes. And every trauma getting unpacked and
no escape.
no escape.
Even with mother, sometimes there's no escape. But with the music and everything, you can kind of have some support. Yeah, there's some support there. But with Iboga, it's like you and your demons in the room. I actually had a very insane experience.
Could you tell me about it?
Yeah, sure, brother. So Iboga was, for me, not just about my trauma, which I have a fucking extensive list of trauma, but it was an initiation where at one point, and this was after my Iboga trip, the physical reality broke and all I saw was complete demons in the physical flesh. And I took off all my clothes and I ran out on the street butt naked screaming my head off.
What street?
Mac, I can't.
Oh, okay, yeah. But like a suburban street?
Yeah.
Like in a West
City, Westminster, no way, yeah. Busy, bro. And my father and my girlfriend at the time had to run after me to make sure I wasn't, because I wanted to kill myself. But that was, I'm not trying to scare people here. That was my experience because it was an initiation. But Iboga forces you to confront your soul's journey and everything your soul's picked up on, all the fucking lifetimes of violence, but not just violence, also all the lifetimes of learning and lessons and connection. But Iboga kind of traps you in a room with your biggest fears endlessly because your concept of time is gone, everything else is gone. So you're just there immobilized with your biggest fears just for the whole time, and it's speaking to you in plain English, just telling you everything about it.
See, I want to do it, but how the fuck would I ever make that funny? You know what I mean? Like, it's just me and all of my fears in a room. God damn. But I mean, thank you for sharing that.
I'll never go through it again.
Yeah, you scared the shit out of me, that's for sure. No, I don't feel a calling to it. But I think that, like, what it's doing for people with addiction is crazy.
Right.
Like, that's really knocking people's addictions out.
Extremely high success rate.
Yeah, it's like in the 89th percentile for heroin and kind of knocks everything out, which is crazy to me because I'm somebody that struggled with addiction my whole life. And that is amazing to me because it definitely comes from somewhere, right? Like I remember the first time I smoked weed being like, oh, sick. Like I don't have to think about anything. You know what I mean? Like all of the stuff that I felt insecure about and all of that stuff, that was all kind of gone, and and everything was just funny. You know, I remember listening to like the Beatles, which is what everyone does, Sergeant Pepper's, you know, and smoking weed in my mate's garage. And like he worked at KFC at the time. So he had a fridge full of chicken, you know what I mean? And when you're 15, well, I was 14, he was 15, and you're smoking weed for the first time, and you've got a mate that's got the hookup, got the plug to KFC, and he's got a fridge full of chicken. I mean, brother, that's like, I mean, you don't get better friendships than that, you know? And I remember being like, oh, wow, this is the thing. I don't have to think about anything that I don't want to. Of course, later, as soon as you start really smoking weed, you start thinking about
yeah. So it's funny, yeah, right. Like when you're smoking weed as a teenager, it's the best thing ever.
Totally.
It's the best. Like
Yeah.
life is perfect. You know, like I want to smoke this for the rest of my life, all day, every day. But then once you've done some kind of shift where it's like you had some kind of awakening to like your subconscious and your fucking issues. We can be the most terrifying thing ever. Cannabis, yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to cannabis. But also like, man, I have some respect for that medicine because it's funny to me. Like people would be like, I'd talk to people and they'd be like, oh, I can't smoke weed. You know, I smoked weed once and I freaked out and I got really paranoid and all of this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, dude, that's my morning, you know? That's how I start the day. I have a coffee and a fucking panic attack, you know? Like, yeah, that's what I do with it. I guess I was like always chasing the green dragon, you know, of trying to get back to it. Nowadays, I can't really even get near it. You know, I had a shaman explain to me once about marijuana, which I really love this description of it, right? You know, like going back to talking about the spirit that every plant has. The way she described it to me was like, marijuana is a great medicine, but it is like a really jealous, controlling ex-girlfriend. You know what I mean? It's like having a Latina missus, let's say. And what it'll do is it'll make you, it's like stay home. Watch Sopranos again, mate. It only goes for 96 hours. Watch the lot, brother, you know? Order a couple of Dominoes. You've earned it, you know? Get the garlic bread. Hey, why don't you put some fucking, go into your fridge, cook some bacon up, stuff that in the garlic bread. See what else you can do with it, you know? You're killing it. You're doing a great job. Meanwhile, you were meant to be at work at Bunnings 40 minutes ago. You know what I mean? The phone's been ringing off the hook, you know? And your kind of whole life is falling apart, but you kind of think you're crushing it.
Right.
And as you get older, I don't know, man, I was smoking weed right through my 30s, especially when COVID hit. I started it again, and you just can't do it in your 30s, man. Like the only people that are successful with it are like Snoop Dogg and maybe like Seth Rogen, and they're movie stars, man, and rappers, like, and they're worth millions. I can't think of anyone that's kind of really functioning, really operating at their highest level and still smoking pot a lot. Shout out to you if you are, though, by the way, because if you can, much respect. But I think that like in Australia, and I think Western culture, right? We have this thing of like everything has to be to excess. When you drink, you do it until you're fucking maggoted on the floor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And your dad has to come and pick you up from a house party and you just vomited in your brand new beanie.
Yeah.
Not that that's happened to me. And and like when in France, for example, like when you're sitting down and you're 8 years old and they have this much wine with dinner. And so by the time they're like 18, 19, it's not a big deal. For us, when it's time to start drinking, we start drinking.
Yeah, 100%.
And you're doing it in secret. And you're doing it like as much as you can. And it's about getting the excess of it, like as extreme as you can. What's crazy with weed is they're making it so strong. It doesn't need to be that strong.
I know.
You know?
Yeah.
Get some bush chuff. What's going on?
And I think that's where the Europeans have it right, man. They don't need they don't have this Western urge to optimize or push everything to the limits. You know,
Mm-hmm.
my mate was telling me he's an Aussie guy, and you know, he's big on the whole biohacking scene and stuff. And he went to Budapest and he did an ice bath there, and he's like trying to ask the guy in front of him to move so he can time himself. Like he's got to do it for 5 minutes, and the guy's just like, relax, American, you know, like just do it until you feel comfortable and then jump out. There's no need to push yourself.
Totally.
And I think that stress on the body of trying to optimize everything, that's what's killing us more than, you know, all the other harmful shit, right?
Bro, I agree with that on such a major level. Like I've been on this journey of kind of like self-reflection and healing myself. And once you become addicted to that. Like I've got this addictive personality. And once you're addicted to that, you're addicted to convincing yourself that you're broken. You know what I mean? And with like Instagram and all of these different social media apps, there's always somebody that's got a better life than you. We're not supposed to, you know what I'm saying? But they don't, but they do. You know what I mean? But on paper or on the screen, it looks like their life is better than you. And it's this time suck energetically. But when you get addicted to like something like an ice bath, where it's like, I've got to do it for 5 minutes. If you did it for 4 minutes and 50 seconds, is there a big difference?
Yeah.
Is it because Huberman said it was the optimal amount of time? You know, like doing what feels right for you and learning how to slow down. It's one of those things that like, it takes time to get to that place. It takes time. It's unfortunate, but it really does. Yeah. It takes time to get to this. Like I can't really drink anymore because I know where it takes me, you know? If I go for 1 pint, I knock the top off a pint, the froth off a pint. And before I know it, I'm in some bloke's kitchen 2 days later, rambling at him about 9/11 and the best days of my life when I was in my 20s. And he's like, who's this 40-year-old in my kitchen? Does he have any bag or do I have to kick him out? Right. You know? Yeah. So yeah, I think that journey, getting addicted to that journey of like constantly being like, I've got to be better, is actually more toxic than a lot of people let on. It's billions of dollars in it too, right? In convincing people they're broken.
Right. 100%. Yeah. And like, you know, having to, I don't know. Yeah. Like social media is just definitely like a huge one. Because as you said, you're just scrolling at all these things that you want, but you don't have. And you're just constantly reminding yourself that I need this in order to feel a certain way.
100%. It's my worst addiction at the moment. I would say my phone.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, you know, like, that's why I guess a good time to segue into like how much gratitude I have for this country, like of Thailand, and how much gratitude I have for the people that I do this work with as well. Mm-hmm. Like it's such a unique but refreshing energy to bring into the medicine space, which is this Buddhist Asian culture that is just so rooted in just being like chill.
It was one of the great blessings about that whole space was like, yeah, once you bring, I never imagined it, you know, it takes away the rigidity of it all. Right. You know what I mean? Where it's got to be done this way. It's 5 minutes in the ice bath. Ayahuasca has to be done in this particular fashion. Adding these like tenets of Buddhism or whatever, man, you know, it just makes it so much easier. I've been thinking a lot about God in this last like month since I've got to Thailand, and these people have such an amazing connection to it. You know, this whole like Thailand is the land of smiles and blah, 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 like all of these things. There's real truth to the reverence that they have for the type of religion that is so prominent in this country.
Right.
And I used to hate religion. I used to think that religion was so stupid. I remember being like 5 years old and we used to have religious education in primary school. And I asked my religious education teacher, why did my mum die? And she said, because God's got a plan for us all. And I hated that answer. I was like, you fucking dog. And I couldn't get my head around that, you know? And I couldn't stand this woman and I turned away from it right then and there. It was never a big part of my family anyway. But now I get it a lot more. Now I understand religion a lot more because life is really hard.
Right.
And it's a really complicated thing to work out. And if you need something, whatever if it's a guy in the sky or a dude on the cross who just happens to be jacked, have a fucking mad 8-pack, you know what I mean? And he turns out to be white even though he's from the Middle East. But hey, whatever, whatever works for you, or if it's a golden Buddha, that's amazing. But adding those more softer elements to plant medicine has been a revelation for me that I didn't see coming,
Right.
and honoring the spirits of this place. I mean, for me, dude, I get to Thailand and like my whole nervous system settles.
Yeah.
It's on this dumb watch that I wear. Like it shows me my heart rate variability. Speaking of, constantly trying to be better, but it's like dropped like 7 points. And it literally, I got here on December 26th. On December 27th, my stress levels dropped immediately.
Yeah.
Like there is something, an energy to this place that's definitely not prominent in Australia.
Yeah, 100%.
Australia is so like, it's always go, go, go. And it's about, it's the West, right?
Yeah.
It's the consumerism.
And it's also the mentality that they know the best. Western culture is where it's at, from the movies and everything. All the heroes are westernized everything. But what I find with the Thai people is they have this connection to some kind of spiritual plane that just keeps them, even if they're not conscious of it, that just keeps them aware that there's a whole, that we're moving all as one. It's not just about the individual, like that's why I love driving in North Thailand a lot, because it's like, it's not about following the rules. It's about going with the flow and what's easiest for everybody.
100%.
And that kind of mindset puts me at ease, where, okay, just because, not that I run red lights, but like if there's a red light, but no one's there and there's heaps of people behind you, the people want me to go, in that sense,
This is what I was saying, man. Asians, and it's a controversial opinion, Asians are actually the best drivers, and you good luck saying that to an Australian, but they are, because I know people back home. My sister, she'll crash her car every 5 minutes. You know what I mean? Try strapping a wardrobe to her back and putting her on a motor scooter.
Sure.
But you get to Thailand, there's a 6-year-old, the whole family's on there, and he's driving. You know what I mean? And no one's wearing a helmet, and they're getting to their destination safely.
There's a shit.
Dude, I saw this fucking video. Fucking made me laugh the other day. It was the Thai police had posted it, and it was an old man, and he was on a scooter. He looked like he was about 188 years old, riding a scooter with a little kid on his back, right? And neither of them were wearing a helmet. And it was kind of like a feel-good Thai police. It was from the Thai police. I don't know how it ended up in my algorithm, but they've pulled this bloke over, right? And he thinks he's getting in trouble. And the Thai policeman goes into the back of his car and he comes out with a brand new helmet for this old man.
Right.
And he's like, there you go, mate. There's a helmet for you. Get back on the road.
That's the way.
New helmet. And then the kid is just like, no helmet, just strapped onto the back. There's like a 6-year-old. He's just like, off you go, old timer. And the 6-year-old's still doing just raw dogging, no helmet on that kid. And he's back on the road, But it's just like, yeah, man, I think that what you said about the flow of this place is really impressive. And it slows down, and the people here are just like, I don't know, man, it's so much easier to get along with people,
Yeah.
You haven't been home in ages, eh?
Like 7 years.
Yeah, man. I think like you go to a restaurant here and they're like, oh my God, it's so, sorry, Carl, it's nice to see you. They're so happy that you're there just to get a couple of chicken skewers. Go into a KFC and have a 17-year-old Maori look at you like he's going to kick your head in back home. And you know what I mean? Yeah, it's a different story.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're getting paid 10 times more, It's even like one thing I've noticed, because I've been doing some Muay Thai while I'm here. And at the gym that I'm at over in Pai, I'll say to the trainers, I'll be like, you can do a one-on-one for 600 baht, which is like 30 bucks Australian, which is above the way above the minimum wage in Australia. And you'll go to them and you'll be like, hey mate, do you want to do a one-on-one session? And they'll be like, oh yeah. And you'll be like, what about 3 o'clock? And they're like, nah, 3 o'clock's not good. And you're like, what about 4 o'clock? They're like, nah, 4 o'clock's not for me. Like 5 o'clock. And they're like, you know what? I'm not going to do it. And you're like, oh, but don't you want the money? Like, that's good money, And they're like, no, I'm just going to go hang with my family, or like hang out with my girlfriend or whatever. There's not this drive to constantly be getting something,
Sure.
Everything's not transactional.
Yeah, because now in spirituality, it's all about fucking manifesting the Lambo and manifesting the fucking yacht.
Chuck it on the vision
Yeah,
board.
but like, is that, you know, I was listening to a podcast and they're saying like, is that a true desire of yours, or is that been implanted by conditioning?
I 100% agree.
And that makes me question my drive for wealth and abundance. Do I really want this excessive lifestyle, or do I just want to feel like nature has my back? Nature will look after me. I'm protected. I'm nurtured. I'm looked after, you know.
Safety as well, and freedom. Right. These things that you can give yourself, right? It's funny because you always read those stories. Like, there's some of my favorite stories, because shout out to them. But like the guy in England that wins 130 million bucks on the lottery, and like 14 months later he's back to being a garbage. He's broke, you know.
Cocaine hookers,
cocaine and hookers, mate. Like if I'd won the lottery anytime in my 20s or 30s, I'd be dead. It'd be a bigger curse than a blessing.
for sure.
It'd be the Midas touch to me, you know?
Yeah, but now's a good time though. Just
Sorry, universe, just if you're listening, this would actually be pretty sick right now. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I think you got to change your opinion on what you really want, breaking down what you really want. And that's a great thing about Aya as well. Whenever anyone asks me about what it is and what it's like, I kind of go, we talk about she speaks to you, right? And whenever I'm trying to describe that to somebody, they're like, she speaks to you. And it's like, yeah, but it's always my voice that I'm hearing in my head, you know? Well, most of the time. Sometimes it's something else. But all of the revelations that I get, all of the things that I get on how to make myself better, or how to heal myself, or how to enjoy this life more and enjoy what I have in gratitude, they're always things that I already knew. There's never some revelation that's like, whoa, like, you know, like the first time you've seen some movie and you're like, that was fucking amazing. It's always something I knew deep down inside me was real. And she just cleared all of the muck out of the way so that I could see that for myself, you know? I think that what you were talking about with the Lambo and like, do you really want this? The scary thing about social media, the scary thing about your phone is the way it sucks you in, and the way it like kind of just, it really just drains all of that energy from you.
And it knows how to. It knows what, like, you know, it'll be like showing you Lambos, maybe like sneaking a Buddha quote just to keep you going.
Oh man.
And then a Brazilian ass or something, you know.
Yeah, man, we got the same algorithm. No, but it is like that. It's crazy. My algorithm is like wild, where you kind of go, how did this come up? But I can, because of my ADHD and my addictive personality, I can jump on something like Instagram and lose hours, hours of my day, you know? And it's just flicking through and never finding anything, you know? It's the ultimate, like, you can never find what you're looking for out of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. That process of getting off my phone is a big one for me. That's my next big addiction to tackle.
Okay. Yeah, I've just deleted all apps. I've even removed the internet from the home screen.
Wow.
So that's helped a lot.
Yeah.
Screen time. But yeah, look, I also want to touch on, if you don't mind, going towards your mom's transition, like passing to the next life. Like, you're open to talk about it.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
Perhaps like what were the exact because I lost my mom not too long ago as well, and it's a funny thing losing your parents, you know. And I lost my mom when I was 27, and people were like, oh, it must be hard losing your mom that young. And I'm like, man, like there's some people who've lost their mom when they were like 3 or 4 or something, and that could be your case. And it's still been a missing piece of my journey. Her absence, even though I think that it doesn't affect me that much, there's still some void that I realize that I can't fill now in this life. You know, whether it's physically or emotionally or something. And yeah, like, you know, like I don't know what your background with it is.
So yeah, the story with my mum was it was Valentine's Day, February 14th. So we're approaching the anniversary of it. And I was born May 21st. So I would have been about 17, 18 months old when she passed. It was a car accident. She'd gone to a party with some people. She was in an acting class, and they'd all gone to a party together. And she wasn't driving. Somebody else was driving, but they were drunk. And he crashed into. There was no barriers on the road back then, and the car ended up in the Yarra River, and she drowned in the Yarra. That was how she met her final demise, which is a big river that goes through Melbourne. And yeah, I was really, really young, and I have these sort of pieced together memories of the sorrow that was in my household, especially for like my dad. My dad is like the strongest person I know because he was able to weather that storm. I couldn't even imagine what it was like. And for a lot of my emotion around it is sort of like, I feel like my dad did it a lot tougher than I did, even though I probably did it tough in my own way. And the people that really knew her, and I feel like I really know my mum in a very different way, in that there's a part of my soul that is definitely hers, because I know enough about the rest of my family to know that that comes from a different place, and I feel very guided by her, and very grateful to her for giving me that life. I think in a lot of ways, it may be, it's not easy. There's so much stuff still to unpack from that. My whole personality is built around this lack of not knowing this certain personality that made me, created me, I think. And even like humor and stuff being such a fallback for me is a result of losing her at such a young age, and the sorrow that was around me from such a young age, where I wanted my dad to feel better. I wanted her friends and my grandparents and all of that stuff to not be sad, um, with you, like losing your mum at 27, I don't think you're ever going to be ready, right? Like, I don't think you're ever going to be ready. But there is something about it being at such a young age. This is me now talking. Me in my 20s, me in my teens wouldn't have said this at all, because I was a very angry person. I was angry at her. This is something that came up in ceremony. I never realized how angry I was at her for dying, which was a wild concept to me, that I was mad at somebody who died in an accident. It's an accident. It's the word itself. But I was furious at her for abandoning me, even though it wasn't a choice of hers, obviously. For everything I know about her, all she really wanted her whole life was to be a mum. And she only got to experience that for a very short amount of time.
Yeah.
So it was a difficult thing. But I know people whose dads are fucking scumbags and are still alive, and they have to deal with that. And that's a whole different type of trauma to have to go through. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. One thing that was really difficult, especially in my teens, and it was a revelation that I had much later on in life, is when somebody dies when they're so young. I think she would have been like 23, 22, 23 when she died. When somebody dies when they're so young, and then I'm the kin, at least from my experience, I only ever heard good stories. I only ever heard how great she was, what an angel she was, how loving she was, how caring she was. So when I started going through puberty and going through all of those crazy feelings, and you kind of feel like a bit of a piece of shit for no reason, and anxiety starts to creep in, and depression, I couldn't make heads or tails of that, because, well, the person that brought me into this world was the greatest person ever. They never put a foot wrong. Later on in my life, I heard some stories about her being a bit of a ratbag like I was, and that was good. That was better for me to hear, than to hear that you've got this thing to live up to that you can't possibly get your head around, and through my plant medicine journeys, and I feel a much deeper connection to her than ever. And it's funny, the ripples of tragedy that come from it. Life is so funny in these ways, and so precious, where somebody crashes a car into a river, and then the whole fabric of time changes, and all of these relationships change. And I've got a stepmom who I love dearly and who's always loved me like a son. But the person driving the car, the guy that was driving
Still
the
alive?
car, no, he took his own life.
Oh,
Not long afterwards. He was 22, 23, and he's just killed someone's mum, you know? And he took his own life. And years later, when I was in my early 20s, I'm working at a bar, and the DJ was this old rocker guy who was a fucking legend, just used to play like old records. And we were talking, and I brought up who my dad was, and he goes, his face changed, and he lived with the guy. He was with the guy who was driving the car. He lived in the apartment upstairs from my mum and dad. That's how they knew each other, you know? And he told me that destroyed his life. That destroyed this guy's life.
and he was probably an all right guy as well.
Yeah. I mean, who knows, you know? But like, I don't think he definitely didn't mean it,
Right.
you know? And just the ripple effects of that, and like hearing that from somebody that knew him. And my dad had always been very clear with me that it was a tragedy that this guy had to die as well. There was no anger there from my dad. But to hear that from somebody else and to process that, and to realize that it was so much more than just my own trauma, it passes on through all of these different people, because then there's his parents and his brothers and sisters that have to go through their own shit like that, you know? And the way that fabric of reality can just change on a dime so quickly is a really fascinating thing to me. And people will often ask me with Aya, especially people going through their own trauma with losing their parents or anything like that, will say, oh, did you speak to your mum? I want to go and I want to speak to my mum. I want to speak to my grandfather. I've had ceremonies where I have connected with her very, very deeply. It was never what I was asking for, you know, and it came to me almost very surprisingly, and it was beautiful, and it was the healing that I needed. I've had a ceremony where she came and she took my spirit out of my body, and our two spirits, I was this purple soul light and she was blue, and she showed me all of the times in my life where she's been there. She lives right over my left shoulder, and all of these times where I should have been in trouble. I fucking went to jail in Bangkok for having weed when I was 18, and all of this stuff. I've just sort of skirted all of these really hairy situations, and she showed me how she was there and guiding me that whole time. And that's really beautiful. And I had another really similar thing in ceremony very recently, with the connection of her and her clearing all of this muck away from my heart. But one of the things I ponder all the time, and I don't need an answer to, but I think about it a lot, is when I say I met the spirit of my mum, did I really? Do I really have this thing living over, her spirit living over my left shoulder and protecting me and guiding me all the time? I mean, in reality, like as a scientist would look at it, who knows? Because what matters to me is like what I choose my reality to be, how I perceive my reality to be. Because that could have just been ayahuasca just going, this is the medicine that you need. So this is what I'm going to show you. I just choose to believe it's like that. And it's so much easier, right? It's so much easier to go through my life like that. It's exactly what we were talking about before with religion. If you need to believe in something, then fucking go for it.
Yeah, definitely. I saw this Ricky Gervais bit where it wasn't a show, but it was just like a acting where it's like there's this kid with dying of cancer, and you know how Ricky's like, he's quite a out there atheist, right? And the kid's like you believe in God, right? And it's like I'm gonna go to heaven, right? And in that moment, it was like, yeah, I'll believe in God for this kid. Like,
Yeah.
even if it's against whatever I've said, for this kid to have that hope, I'll even make myself believe it. And that was the message I got. And it was quite touching to me, because like, yeah, like having those beliefs, it gives us a depth to life, and we don't need to know the answers, you know?
No.
But as long as it can make us have more empathy for our brothers or sisters who are going through extreme hardship, I think it's worth it to believe, you know? Yeah.
I 100% agree. And it comes back to all of those really cliched things of like, just do good for other people, be kind to yourself, you know, as much as you possibly can. And good things come, and like whatever you need to believe to get through this crazy, wild journey, then that's cool with me. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Life's too short to not go through all of that stuff,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and process it in your own way, you know.
Right.
I wonder that as well about like, there's definitely some pent up trauma. Like, here's a quick story. I got no sense of smell, right? I've never smelt anything as long as I've been alive. I don't even understand the sensation of smell.
Really?
Yeah.
Like zero.
Zero.
Like if I farted, you wouldn't know.
Well, that is the question that every cunt asks straight away. I've been saying it my whole life, and everyone has always just been, wait, so if I took a dump right on your chest, you wouldn't be able to smell it? And I'm like, no, mate, please don't take a dump on my chest. You know what I mean? Not unless I'm paying top dollar. Yeah, no, I've never smelled anything. And I had this ceremony, this very same ceremony, that one I spoke about, where my soul left my body and the purple and the blue spirit and everything. And I went and sat down in front of this particular shaman that I was working with, this guy named Roman, and he was really tapped. He was a big golden energy, looked like a big old Buddha, you know, Shipibo. And he did a thing called a limpieza in ceremonies, where you would sit down in front of him and you would ask him a question, and he would sing an Ikaro that was very specific to you. You know, an Ikaro, these songs of the plants, very specific to you and your question, and he would ask his plant spirit guides and give you an answer. Well, my whole life, we've been trying to work out this no sense of smell thing. I've done CAT scans, I've done all this different stuff, and no doctor has ever been able to give me an answer. Some Chinese medicine and all of this stuff, and there's been no solution to it. He told me, it was after this ceremony, right? This is a fucking crazy story. It was during this ceremony where my spirit had left my body, and I was seeing this girl at the time, and I like took her to do ayahuasca, and I was like, watch this, babe. I'm the ayahuasca expert. I'll show you how it's done. And I'm just in a heap crying fucking while my spirit leaves my body, and she's having the time of her life, and I'm like freaking out. But it was beautiful as well. And I went and sat down in front of this dude, in front of Rahman, and he said to me, because this is probably 3-4 hours into the ceremony, he said to me, I see you met the blue lady tonight. And I go, huh? And he goes, the blue lady, she travels everywhere with you. I see that you met her tonight. And I go, yeah. And he goes, yeah. I couldn't tell you about her. You had to discover her for yourself, you know? And I was like, whoa.
Rahman, eh?
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, that's my mom. And he's like, oh, okay, you know, cool. Yeah. Shipibo, yeah.
Ah.
Yeah. And he was like, oh, okay. You know, like he was like, oh, that's interesting. You know, like he'd known it all along and all of that stuff. But that was the first thing he said to me. And I can't remember the question that I was going to ask him, but it just came out of my mouth. I said, I don't have a sense of smell. I want to know why I don't have a sense of smell. And he sung this Ikaro, and he came back to me and he said, every sense has a memory, right? So your touch has the shortest memory. So you can touch this chair and I can be like, oh, my grandma had a chair that was made out of this material. Or you can hear a song and you remember where you were when you heard that song for the first time. And all of these different things. Every scent has a memory, and hearing's like 30 years and touch is like 10 years and whatever. But smell, the memory is infinite. It'll last with you for as long as you live. And it was always an amazing thing with me with smell, where like you'd be walking down the street with a mate and a girl would walk past and my mate would go, that girl smelled just like my ex-girlfriend in high school. And you could see them get transported back to this place in their life just from like a whiff of somebody that was walking past. Lynx Africa. What is that? You know? And they was, if you're dating a chick that smells like Lynx Africa, you got other problems. But anyway, they would catch this whiff, and I was fascinated by that, by how you could be drawn to this other place. And Rahman told me, he said, every sense has a memory, and smell is the most powerful one we have. And what happened when your mum died and you were still a baby and you were still breastfeeding? Babies need the smell to be able to find their mum's nipple. They need the smell to be able to attach themselves to their mum. And when she died and you were cut off from that, your brain knows how to protect itself from trauma. So what your brain has done is disconnected you from your sense of smell so that you won't have to live through the crazy trauma that you went through from losing your mum. And he said, if you want, come and sit with me for 32 weeks in Plant Theatre, and we will process all of the trauma of your mum dying, and I will get you your sense of smell back.
And you were like,
And I said, no thanks, gun. No, I mean, at some stage I'm going to have to, but I was like, nah, not right now.
Okay.
You know, it's a whole different journey that I'm going to have to embark on there.
That's
You know, and he knew, he was happy with that answer. Yeah. But yeah, man. So that's just one of those wild stories.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, man. I think these stories are the stories that also make me fall in love with shamanism. And
yeah, well, you're doing great work, man. You really are. Like, not just in medicine. So we haven't really sat. We've had one or two ceremonies, maybe only one.
now
We've done Cambo with other things together.
yeah, we did combo. We did combo together.
Yeah.
That was probably the first time we met.
That was the first time.
And that was probably the only ceremony because I didn't do the ayahuasca with you guys.
Yeah.
But
you hold that space really beautifully. But what the other thing that you do really well is you just hold space for men really well to be able to just share.
Yeah.
And I can see that you're growing and sitting with comfort in that. And that's a powerful medicine. There's a lot of sickness in men, you know? And to be able to hold that space outside of the medicine. I mean, this is coming back to integration. The work gets done afterwards. And what I know right now is I'm so fresh off all of these ceremonies. It's like, all right, well, now it's back to work, you know, like on myself. Now I've got to work out those things that are like, and for you to hold space for people to be able to do that is really, really important. And that's all I can really speak of because I haven't sat with you in a ceremonial capacity, but only in a real life capacity, you know, and like you've held space for me and for a couple of the friends that I've made on this thing. And I hope you know that this life that we get is such a small, slight, precious gift. And it's so important what you choose to do with it. And if you can make other people's lives better, just from being yourself and just from holding space, then that's a really great gift to give to people, you know?
Yeah, no, thanks, man. That was really gay, but that means a lot to me, man.
No, of course.
I think like
well, if you don't like that, you can go out and ride the Macarena, do something else for the world, brother. But fuck it.
No, I very inappropriate joke, but
yeah, no, that was funny. Don't worry about it.
Shit. Now, like meeting you, and finding out you were a comedian, was like awesome for me because that's always something that, I really respected was comedians, honestly, and having our connection, as well with Oisin and it's just that's how I say.
However you say it.
Yeah, but you know, helping men. I don't know, man. Like, I lacked so much male guidance in my childhood, in my teenage years, that led me to extremely painful roads and blaming men, blaming women. And I just feel as though if I can connect with more brothers and build some kind of bond with more brothers that come through, it would give each of us strength, right? Like,
I think that you're doing that, man. I think you're on that path.
Yeah, because when I was with you, man, like even I'm going through some shit right now, but when I'm around your energy, it lightens me up, bro.
No,
it's like I can still fucking enjoy this life with whatever's being processed right now.
Thanks,
So,
brother.
I appreciate that so much.
I appreciate you as well. Yeah, I think that thing that you said about men, it is the relationships that we have, like so much of my relationships with men, especially older men in my teens, they were all just dudes that I got drugs off. You know what I mean? And like looking back, it's like, holy shit, those were some toxic relationships.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah.
Like, and there was a lot of violence and like, there was no working through the shit, you know?
Yeah, Aussie men, they're very funny with emotions and sexuality and it's like they don't have there were very few Aussie men where I felt like they had a good intention in looking after somebody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like that feeling when you take care of a younger bloke, like
Yeah.
sort of like, okay, I've been there, and like I just want you to know that I want to only give you like the right intention or the right knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I agree 100%. I don't know. We might have different algorithms, but I'm getting a lot of like Aussie dudes in the not medicine space, but the like holding space for men. And it is pretty funny. It's like when you listen to Aussie hip hop and you kind of like, there's something that just doesn't quite fit with this. When dudes are like, yeah, cunts, I used to fucking get on the bags real heavy, mate. I was fucking out there on the ice and I realized it's fucking no good for you. So come out here and do some breath work with this, brother. We'll just breathe through all this shit, mate. I've been in jail. And you're just like, all right.
Yeah.
But the gentle side of healing and holding space for men is something that you do really well, but you also, I can really feel the masculine in you is very strong as well. But
Yeah,
so
thank you, brother. Yeah.
I appreciate you as well, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother. Yeah. How much time do we have, Tantra?
Like 10 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, cool. So yeah, Eddie, like, is there any advice perhaps we can like finish off this? Is there anything you want to share with perhaps people back home or people just like looking for themselves right now and considering ayahuasca or different plant medicines as a route? Is there anything that you can say to them to perhaps even give them the courage or like guide them in the right direction to finding what they have to?
Yeah. I would say if it's something that you are considering, you really don't have anything to fear because all of the answers are inside you anyway. So they're all there. Even a ceremony that I did very, very recently, I had so much nerves attached to it, so much fear that I almost went away from it, but it was life-changingly good, and I could not stop laughing at the fact, I can't believe I almost didn't do this, but I will also say that as amazing as ayahuasca has been for me and San Pedro and DMT and mushrooms and all of these things, one of the biggest lessons that I ever got from it is the power of intention in general. And when you learn that you bring your intention into a ceremony and you get those answers that you're asking for, or ayahuasca takes you on a journey that's completely different, but somehow answers all the questions that you need answered, then you learn the power of intention. And one great thing about this life is you get to start every day again anew with a different intent, or with the same intention, whatever that intention is to be. One of the great things that I've learned from ayahuasca is the power of intention. I will also say to anyone considering it that the real work begins afterwards. And before. Honor the dieta, do all of the stuff that is outlined to you to do, especially the first few times that you do it. Stay away from the food and the sex and the mindless scrolling and all of that stuff, and really lock in and honor it. Years later, I can have coffee the day before and all of that stuff. It doesn't affect me as much.
Or when you first do it.
But when you first do it, really, really respect it, because it's an intention thing. It's about showing up for yourself before you do it. She's gonna know. She knows everything.
Yeah.
You can't hide from it. So, because if you don't, you're just lying to yourself anyway. So treat that process with respect. Do your research and do it well. Listen to a calling for it. It should be calling to you in a way where things start to line up and fall into place that kind of seem miraculous. Finding the money to do it, or the place to do it, or the right person to do it, just sort of the puzzle pieces start to land. Don't force it. you know, trust your gut on it. If you're the type of person that doesn't feel like you can trust your gut, you know, always give it a little bit more time. In ceremony, listen to the songs, listen to the Icaros, stay present. Before you do ceremony, practice meditation, practice breathing, all of those things that are going to help you through the harder times. Surrender, learn how to surrender to it when you're in medicine and it gets hard, because it will get hard sometimes. And then I would say afterwards, really work on the integration and work on the things that, like, everything that you learned, start putting it into practice. It doesn't have to be the next day, because things land for months afterwards, months and months and months. So I remember, and I tell this story a bit, but the first time I ever did ayahuasca, I asked the shaman, I said, how long does it last for? I was kind of freaking out. I was like, how long does ayahuasca? I meant, like, how long is the ceremony? 4 hours, 6 hours? And they just looked at me and they smiled and they chuckled and they just said, para siempre, which means forever. It lasts forever. It's always within you. So just be mindful, you know, and be prepared to do the work afterwards, because it's not a magic pill, but it is the most magic thing I've ever experienced. Yeah.
Thank you. That is solid advice. I'm gonna put links to Eddie's Instagram, and you can also find him on YouTube.
Yeah, but this year there'll be, all the stuff's gone up this year. I've got it all. Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna start loading.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much, brother. Thanks for everything. I'm so happy to have this connection with you. I know this is a friendship that's gonna last a long time.
I believe
Very
so.
grateful.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Until the next time. Hausch.
Oh,
Oh.
that was good.
Yeah. We got into that right away.
Yeah. Maybe edit out the first 5 minutes, maybe.